Reed Matthews adjusted his tie as he walked through the front door of his suburban home. The scent of slow-cooked beef filled the air. After 15 years running Matthews Security Consulting, he'd learned to read people's intentions in their body language, their micro-expressions, the subtle tells that separated truth from deception. But tonight, walking into his own kitchen, those instincts lay dormant. "Smells incredible in here," Reed called out, setting his briefcase by the door. At 42, his frame still carried the disciplined posture of his Special Forces days, though the gray threading through his dark hair betrayed the years since Afghanistan. Diana looked up from the stove, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, green eyes bright with what Reed mistook for affection. "I wanted tonight to be special. Connor's been studying so hard for his SATs, and you've been working those long hours on the Henderson account," Diana said. 16-year-old Connor emerged from his room, basketball shorts hanging loose on his lanky frame. "Mom said she's making her famous beef stew, the one from your grandmother's recipe," Connor said. Reed smiled, watching his wife ladle generous portions into bowls. Diana had been distant lately, working late at the real estate office, but perhaps she was making an effort to reconnect. He'd noticed the new clothes, the expensive perfume, the way she guarded her phone, but he'd attributed it to midlife restlessness. After all, they'd married young. She was barely 22 when Connor was born. Grandmother's secret was the wine reduction, Diana explained. Her voice carried an odd nervousness Reed's trained ear should have caught. "I added something extra tonight, a special ingredient." The stew was rich, hearty, perfect for the October evening. Reed and Connor ate with enthusiasm, Diana picking at her salad while watching them with an intensity that should have raised alarm bells. But Reed was tired, his guard down in the sanctuary of his own home. 20 minutes later, the room began to tilt. Reed's fork clattered against his bowl as dizziness crashed over him like a wave. Across the table, Connor's face had gone pale, his eyes struggling to focus. "Dad?" Connor's voice sounded distant, distorted. "I don't feel." The kitchen spun violently. Reed gripped the table's edge. His Special Forces training screamed danger signals through the fog clouding his mind. But this wasn't an enemy ambush. This was his own home. His wife standing at the sink with her back turned, shoulders rigid. "Diana," Reed managed, his tongue thick and unresponsive. "Something's wrong. Call 911. She turned slowly, and for a fraction of a second, Reed saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. Not concern, not fear, calculation. "Of course," she said, reaching for her phone with deliberate slowness. "I'm sure it's just food poisoning. These things happen." Reed's vision tunneled. Muscle memory kicked in. The same survival instinct that had kept him alive in Kandahar. Fighting through the disorientation, he stumbled toward Connor, who was sliding sideways in his chair. "We're going to the hospital now," Reed insisted. Diana stepped forward. "Reed, maybe you should rest first. Let me call." "No." The word came out with military authority, cutting through his wife's protest. Reed hauled Connor to his feet, both of them staggering like drunks. His son's arm felt heavier than his combat gear ever had. Diana's mask slipped for just an instant, revealing something cold and predatory underneath. Then she was back to playing the concerned wife. "At least let me drive. You're in no condition," Diana offered. I said no. Reed's hand found his car keys, muscle memory guiding him, even as his vision blurred. Years of tactical training had taught him to function through injury, through exhaustion, through fear. This was no different. The drive to County General was a nightmare of weaving through traffic lights that seemed to strobe, with Connor mumbling incoherently beside him. Reed's hands gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white, fighting to keep the car between the lines as the poison, because that's what this was. His military mind finally accepted, continued its assault on his nervous system. The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and urgent voices. Reed managed to get Connor onto a gurney before his own legs gave out. A nurse caught him as he stumbled. "We need to run blood tests," she said, helping him onto a bed. "What did you eat tonight?" "Beef stew," Reed replied, the words slurring despite his efforts. "My wife made it. Something's wrong. We were fine an hour ago." The tests came back fast. Too fast for routine blood work. Reed's head was starting to clear when Nurse Patricia Williams rushed into his room, her face grave. She was a veteran ER nurse in her 50s, someone who'd seen everything and wasn't easily rattled. She grabbed his arm and leaned close, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't go home. Call 911 now." Reed's blood turned to ice. "What?" "The tests show oleander poisoning, cardiac glycosides. This wasn't accidental." Her eyes darted toward the hallway, then back to him. "Someone tried to hurt you and your son, and they knew exactly what they were doing." Reed's mind snapped into tactical mode, the fog of poison replaced by crystal-clear focus. Oleander. He knew about oleander from his Special Forces SEER training. Survival, evasion, resistance, escape. The plant was common in suburban landscaping, deadly when prepared correctly, and it left a very specific toxicological signature. "How long do we have?" he asked Nurse Williams, his voice steady despite the implications crashing through his consciousness. Reed's phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "How are you feeling?" "The doctor says it might be food poisoning. I'm staying here to clean up and wait for your call." The casual tone made his stomach churn worse than the poison had. While he and Connor had been fighting for their lives, Diana was cleaning up, destroying evidence, most likely. "I need to make some calls," Reed told the nurse. His first call was to Marcus Webb, his business partner and former Army Ranger buddy who handled the technical side of Matthew's security. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Reed, it's past midnight. What's going on?" "I need you to activate the home security system remotely. Full surveillance, all cameras, audio recording, and I need it done quietly." "Done? But why?" "Someone just tried to poison Connor and me. I need to know what Diana's doing right now." There was a pause. "Jesus Christ, I'm pulling up the feeds now. Reed, she's not alone." Reed's jaw tightened. "Who's with her?" "Big guy, blonde hair. Looks like he spends a lot of time at the gym. They're in your kitchen. She's cleaning everything with bleach. And he's checking the garbage disposal." The betrayal hit harder than the poison. Reed had suspected Diana might be having an affair. The signs had been there, but attempted murder was a different universe of betrayal. "Give me everything you can on this guy. Facial recognition, background check, the works, and Marcus. This conversation never happened." "Copy that, Reed. What are you planning?" Reed watched Connor sleeping in the next bed, his son's face pale but peaceful, unaware of how close he'd come to death. How close they'd both come to being erased so Diana could start fresh with her lover. "Justice," Reed replied. Over the next 2 hours, while pretending to rest, Reed built a picture of his wife's deception with the methodical precision that had made him one of the Army's most effective operators. Marcus fed him intelligence through secure channels. The man in Reed's kitchen was Shane Morrison, 34, a personal trainer at Elite Fitness, where Diana had started working out 6 months ago. No criminal record, but 3 previous relationships with married women who'd all divorced their husbands within a year of meeting Shane, a pattern of a predator who specialized in breaking up families. Bank records showed Diana had been draining their joint savings account gradually over the past 4 months, moving money to an account Shane had helped her open. She'd also increased Reed's life insurance policy to $2 million just 3 months ago, claiming it was for Connor's college fund. The planning was extensive, sophisticated. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a calculated execution. Reed's phone buzzed again. "The doctor says you need to stay overnight for observation. I'll pick you both up in the morning. Love you," Diana texted. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. She was checking on the success of her murder attempt while texting loving messages. Reed typed back, "Connor's feeling much better. They might release us in a few hours. I'll call when we're ready." Then he called Detective Lauren Hayes, a contact from his security consulting work. Lauren specialized in domestic crimes and had seen enough poisoning cases to know the patterns. "Reed, it's 3 a.m. This better be good. Someone tried to kill me and my son tonight. Oleander poisoning. My wife made dinner, and she's the only one who had access to our food." Lauren's voice sharpened. "Where are you now?" "County General. We're stable, but I need advice. I have evidence that she's been planning this with her lover. I have video of them destroying evidence right now." "Reed, listen to me carefully. Do not go home. Do not confront them. File a police report and let us handle this. Let them lawyer up and walk away." "Lauren, you know how these cases go. Without a confession or someone catching them in the act, it's nearly impossible to prove intent with poisoning." "What are you thinking?" Reed's voice carried the cold calculation that had made him lethal in Afghanistan. "I'm thinking about giving them exactly what they want. Let them think their plan worked." By dawn, Reed had his strategy. He would let Diana and Shane believe they'd succeeded in eliminating him and Connor, then systematically destroy everything they cared about before revealing that he was very much alive and very much aware of their betrayal. The first phase would require him to disappear convincingly. The second phase would require patience. The third phase would require the skills the Army had taught him, skills Diana had no idea her husband possessed. As he watched Connor wake up, groggy but healthy, Reed made a promise. His wife and her lover had made the mistake of targeting his son. They would learn that some betrayals can never be forgiven, and some men can never be defeated. The war was just beginning. Reed discharged himself and Connor from the hospital at 6 a.m., using his security clearance to access a service exit that bypassed the main cameras. Years of tactical planning had taught him that the first rule of any operation was controlling information flow. And right now, Diana couldn't know they'd survived her murder attempt intact. "Dad, I don't understand why we can't just go home," Connor said as Reed guided him toward Marcus's waiting SUV in the hospital parking garage. "Because home isn't safe right now, son." Reed's voice carried a gravity that made Connor straighten up. "Your mother tried to hurt us last night." The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Connor's face went through several emotions: disbelief, confusion, then a dawning horror as the pieces clicked into place. "The stew. That's why she didn't eat any. That's why she kept watching us." Connor's voice cracked. "Mom really tried to... She wanted us gone?" Reed placed a firm hand on his son's shoulder. "Yes. And until we understand why and who she's working with, we need to stay invisible." Marcus Webb emerged from behind the SUV, his weathered face grim. At 38, Marcus still carried himself like the ranger he'd once been, compact and alert. "I've got a safe house set up. My cabin in the mountains. Off-grid, secure, and completely untraceable to either of you," Marcus said. During the drive, Reed outlined the situation for Connor, watching his son process the reality that his mother had become a stranger willing to do such a thing. It was a hard lesson about trust, but Connor needed to understand the stakes. She's been having an affair with a personal trainer named Shane Morrison, Reed explained. They've been planning this for months. Moving money, increasing life insurance, probably planning to disappear together once we were out of the picture. Connor stared out the window at the passing landscape. How long have you known? I suspected the affair for a few weeks. The attempted murder? I figured that out when the toxicology results came back. Reed's voice softened slightly. I'm sorry you had to learn about your mother this way. What happens now? Reed's expression hardened. Now we make them pay for what they've done. The cabin was 40 miles outside the city, accessible only by a winding dirt road that would make surveillance nearly impossible. Marcus had stocked it with enough supplies for a month, along with communication equipment that couldn't be traced back to any of them. First priority is making Diana think her plan worked, Reed explained as they settled into the rustic interior. Marcus is going to have our car found abandoned near Devil's Lake. When the police investigate, they'll discover we never made it home from the hospital. What about security cameras? Connor asked, his analytical mind, so much like Reed's, already working through the logistics. Taken care of. Marcus has a contact who will edit the hospital footage to show us leaving through the main entrance, then disappearing into the parking lot. The timeline will suggest we were still heavily affected by the poison when we left, Reed said. Marcus nodded. I've also planted evidence suggesting you might have driven toward the lake in a confused state. Your car will be found there with the doors open, suggesting you both wandered into the water while disoriented. Every detail was falling into place. Clever, Connor said, and Reed felt a complicated mix of pride and sadness at his son's quick grasp of deception tactics. Over the next 48 hours, Reed and Marcus orchestrated a perfect disappearance. Diana reported them missing when they didn't return home, playing the part of the worried wife with an award-worthy performance. She gave tearful interviews to local news stations, describing how her husband and son had been acting strangely after dinner, how she begged them to stay at the hospital. Reed watched these performances from the cabin's secure internet connection, studying his wife's body language with the analytical eye of someone trained to detect deception. She was good, very good, but she made one crucial mistake. She showed no genuine grief, only the performance of grief. She's actually enjoying this, Connor observed, watching his mother's second news interview. Look at her eyes. She's not sad, she's excited. Reed nodded, proud of his son's developing awareness. She thinks she's won. She thinks she's free to start a new life with Shane, probably using our life insurance money to fund it. Meanwhile, Marcus was conducting deep surveillance on both Diana and Shane. The picture that emerged was damning. Shane had a pattern of targeting married women, seducing them, then convincing them to eliminate their husbands. He'd never been caught because he was careful to let the women do the actual killing while he maintained plausible deniability. This guy's done this before, Marcus reported on day 3. I found records of 3 previous married girlfriends whose husbands died under suspicious circumstances. 1 car accident, 1 apparent suicide, 1 heart attack that might have been induced. Why hasn't anyone connected the dots? Connor asked. Because he moves between cities, never uses the same method twice, and he's careful to maintain separate relationships with each woman. No pattern until you know what to look for, Reed explained. The revelation that Shane was a serial killer, that Diana had been manipulated by a predator, might have generated sympathy in a different man. But Reed's capacity for forgiveness had died the moment someone tried to hurt his son. On day 4, Diana and Shane made their first major mistake. Thinking they were unobserved, they moved into Reed's house together. Marcus's surveillance cameras captured them in intimate moments, planning their future with the casual callousness of people who'd successfully committed murder. "We should wait another week before filing the insurance claim," Shane said during one recorded conversation. "Let the search die down completely. I can't wait to get out of this place." "Too many memories," Diana replied. "Once we get the money, we can start fresh somewhere tropical." "What about the kids' college fund? That's another $500,000. Diana's laugh was cold. "Connor won't be needing college anymore." That statement sealed both their fates. Reed had been planning a measured response, something that would expose their crimes and see them imprisoned. But hearing Diana casually dismiss their son's death pushed him into a darker territory. "Dad," Connor had been watching Reed's face during the playback. "What are you thinking?" Reed's smile was predatory. "I'm thinking your mother and Shane are about to learn what happens when someone threatens my family. What's the plan?" Reed looked at his son, 16 years old, mature beyond his years, forever changed by his mother's betrayal. Connor deserved to see justice done, deserved to understand that some people were irredeemable and needed to be stopped permanently. Phase 1 was disappearing. Phase 2 is psychological warfare. We're going to make them question everything they think they know, make them paranoid and desperate. Reed paused, considering how much to reveal to his son. Phase 3 is when they pay the full price for what they've done. Marcus grinned, recognizing the look in his old teammate's eyes. Like the old days in Afghanistan. Exactly like the old days, Reed confirmed. Except this time, we're not bound by rules of engagement. The psychological campaign began as sly as the most effective operations always did. Reed had learned in special forces that the mind was more fragile than the body, and fear of the unknown was more powerful than any physical threat. On Diana and Shane's 5th night in Reed's house, Marcus hacked into the home automation system and began a series of barely perceptible manipulations. Lights flickered for just a moment. The temperature dropped to Dignum. A door that had been left open was found closed the next morning. Classic gaslighting techniques, Reed explained to Connor as they monitored the couple's growing unease through hidden cameras. Make them question their own perception of reality. Shane was the first to crack under the pressure. A man who survived by preying on emotional vulnerability wasn't equipped to handle systematic psychological warfare conducted by professionals. "I keep feeling like someone's watching us," Shane complained to Diana on day 6, pacing nervously around Reed's living room. "And that door thing, I know I left it open. It's just the house settling," Diana replied. But Reed could see the uncertainty in her eyes. Old houses do weird things. That night, Marcus escalated the campaign. Using the home's smart speaker system, he played audio recordings of Reed's voice at barely audible levels. Fragments of conversations, whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Diana woke up screaming at 3 a.m., convinced she'd heard her dead husband calling her name. "There's someone in this house," she told Shane, her composure finally cracking. "I heard Reed's voice. I know what I heard." Shane tried to rationalize it away, but Reed could see the man's confidence eroding. A predator worked by feeling in control, by being the one who manipulated others. Being on the receiving end of manipulation was foreign and terrifying. "Maybe we should move to a hotel until the insurance money comes through," Shane suggested, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "No," Diana snapped. "That looks suspicious. We have to maintain the Grieving Widow Act until this is all settled." But Diana's act was becoming harder to maintain. The constant psychological pressure was wearing her down, making her paranoid and jumpy. She started drinking more, sleeping less, checking locks obsessively. Reed watched it all with cold satisfaction. They're starting to break. Time for Phase 2. Phase 2 involved making their worst fears manifest. Reed had Connor call Diana's cell phone from an untraceable number, playing recordings of Connor's voice calling for help. The calls came at random times, during dinner in the middle of the night, while Diana was showing houses to clients. "Mom? Mom? Where are you? It's dark here, and I can't find Dad," Connor's recorded voice said. Heartbreaking, designed to exploit every maternal instinct Diana might have left. The calls drove Diana to the edge of sanity. She tried changing her number, but the calls kept coming. She went to the police, but they couldn't trace the source, and her story about receiving calls from her dead son made her sound unstable. Shane was even worse. Reed had Marcus plant evidence that someone was investigating Shane's previous relationships. Fake police reports appeared in his mailbox. Photos of his ex-girlfriend's dead husbands showed up on his car windshield. Anonymous tips were called into police departments in cities where Shane had operated before. "Someone knows," Shane told Diana during one monitored conversation. "Someone's connecting the dots about my past relationships. That's impossible," Diana said. But her voice lacked conviction. "There's no way." "Then explain this." Shane showed her a photograph that Marcus had planted, a composite image showing Shane with all 3 of his previous victims' wives. "Someone's been tracking my movements for years." The paranoia was eating them alive, exactly as Reed had intended. Sleep-deprived, constantly on edge, they were making mistakes, becoming sloppy, perfect conditions for the final phase. Meanwhile, Reed was using his security company's resources to build an airtight case against both of them. He had the oleander residue from their kitchen trash, financial records showing the money transfers, surveillance footage of them destroying evidence, and now weeks of recorded conversations planning to defraud the insurance company. But legal justice wasn't enough anymore. Reed had watched Diana laugh about Connor's death too many times, had seen Shane casually planning his next victim. These people were predators who would kill again if given the chance. "What's the end game here, Dad?" Connor asked as they watched Shane pace frantically around the house, checking windows and doors for the 10th time that night. "Shane Morrison has killed at least 4 people, probably more. Diana helped him, and she tried to hurt you. The legal system might give them life in prison if we're lucky, but more likely they'll plea bargain down to manslaughter and be out in 15 years. So, what's the alternative?" "Justice that sticks," Reed said simply. "Shane has a pattern of targeting women at gyms. Tomorrow night he's going to get a taste of being the hunted instead of the hunter." Reed had been planning Shane's takedown with military precision. The man worked late at Elite Fitness every Thursday, closing the gym alone. Security cameras would mysteriously malfunction. Shane would simply disappear, leaving no trace except a note confessing to his crimes and expressing remorse for the families he destroyed. "What about Diana?" Connor asked. Reed's smile was cold. "Diana gets something special. She gets to live with the knowledge that she destroyed everything she ever had for a man who was using her. She gets to spend the rest of her life knowing that her son is alive and will never forgive her. You're going to let her know we survived eventually, after Shane disappears, and she realizes she's completely alone, facing murder charges with no one to help her. That's when she'll learn that the husband and son she tried to kill are very much alive and completely beyond her reach." Connor nodded slowly. At 16, he was old enough to understand that some people couldn't be redeemed, couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be allowed to continue hurting others. "When do we start?" he asked. Reed felt a complex mix of pride and sadness at his son's question. Connor was growing up fast, learning harsh truths about human nature that most people never had to face, but he was also developing the kind of moral clarity that would serve him well in a dangerous world. "Tomorrow night," Reed replied, "Shane Morrison has 1 day left to enjoy his freedom." Elite Fitness closed at 10 p.m. on Thursday nights, leaving Shane Morrison alone to complete the cleaning and equipment maintenance that kept his job secure. It was a routine he'd followed for 3 years, but tonight felt different. The psychological pressure of the past 2 weeks had left him hypervigilant, jumping at shadows, constantly checking over his shoulder. Reed watched from across the street as Shane locked the front entrance, then moved to the rear of the building to begin his closing routine. The gym's location was perfect for Reed's purposes. Isolated, surrounded by warehouses and empty parking lots with no residential witnesses nearby. "Cameras are down," Marcus reported through Reed's earpiece. "I've got a 30-minute window before the security company runs their next diagnostic." Reed checked his equipment one final time. Reed moved through the darkness with practiced silence, decades of training, allowing him to approach the gym's rear entrance without triggering any motion sensors. Shane had propped the back door open while he hauled trash to the dumpster, following the same routine that made him predictable and vulnerable. When Shane returned from his third trip to the dumpster, Reed was waiting in the shadows beside the door. "Shane Morrison," Reed said quietly, stepping into the light. Shane spun around, his face going white with terror. For a moment he stood frozen, staring at a man he believed was dead. "No," Shane whispered. "You're dead. We killed you. You and your son, you're both dead." "Disappointed?" Reed asked, his voice carrying deadly calm. "Did you really think some gym rat and his manipulated wife could outsmart a special forces operator?" Shane turned to run, but Reed was faster. Decades of combat training made the younger man's panicked flight look amateurish. A single precise strike to Shane's solar plexus dropped him to his knees, gasping for air. "Here's what's going to happen," Reed said, injecting the sedative into Shane's neck. "You're going to tell me about all the women you've killed, all the families you've destroyed. You're going to confess everything on camera. And then you're going to disappear forever." As the drug took effect, Shane's eyes went wide with understanding. "You can't do this. I have rights. You can't just—" "You forfeited your rights when you tried to hurt my son," Reed replied, restraining Shane's wrists with military-grade zip ties. "You're a serial killer, Shane. This is justice." Reed loaded Shane into a windowless van and drove to a warehouse Marcus had prepared. Soundproof, isolated, equipped with cameras and recording equipment. Shane would have his chance to confess, providing closure for the families of his previous victims before facing the consequences of his choices. The confession took 3 hours, broken by fear and the psychological pressure of the past weeks. Shane detailed 4 murders spanning 7 years. Each case followed the same pattern. Seduce a married woman, manipulate her into believing she needed to eliminate her husband, then help plan and execute the murder while maintaining plausible deniability. Diana was just the latest, Shane admitted, his voice hollow with defeat. "I picked her because her husband looked military, looked dangerous. I knew he'd be tough to take down, but I thought she had the guts to do it. I was right. She did it without hesitation. She's cold, that one. She's a natural." Diana woke up alone in Reed's bed, the morning light streaming through windows that no longer felt like home. Shane hadn't come to bed the night before, and his phone was going straight to voicemail. She tried to shake off the unease, attributing it to the constant stress and paranoia that had become her daily companions. But as the hours passed and Shane didn't return, her anxiety grew into full-blown panic. She called the gym, but the manager said Shane had never shown up for his shift. She checked his usual haunts, but no one had seen him. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Diana tried to convince herself that Shane had simply gone into hiding, that he was afraid, and had decided to leave her to face the consequences alone. But deep down, she knew something was terribly wrong. She could feel it in her bones, a cold, gnawing dread that refused to let go. She spent the day pacing the house, checking her phone every few minutes, waiting for a call, a message, anything that would explain Shane's disappearance. But the silence was deafening, and the longer it went on, the more her mind raced with worst-case scenarios. As night fell, Diana found herself sitting in the dark, surrounded by the ghosts of her past. She could hear Reed's voice, see his face, feel his presence in every corner of the house. She had tried to erase him, to replace him with Shane, but now she realized that she could never truly escape the man she had once loved. She picked up her phone, dialing Shane's number for what felt like the 100th time. But again, it went straight to voicemail. She left another message, her voice trembling with desperation. "Shane, where are you? Please, just call me. I need to know you're okay." She hung up, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she should call the police, report Shane missing, but she was too afraid. Too afraid of what they might find, too afraid of what they might uncover. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She needed to think, to plan. She needed to figure out what to do next. But as she sat there in the dark, she realized that she was completely and utterly alone. She had no one to turn to, no one to help her, no one to blame but herself. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. She had chosen this path, and now she had to face the consequences. She had to face the truth, that she had destroyed everything she ever had for a man who was using her, a man who had disappeared without a trace, leaving her to face the music alone. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She would face the legal system, face the charges, face the judgment of the world. She would face it all alone, with no one to help her, no one to blame, and no way to escape the justice she had earned. She stood up, her resolve hardening. She would not go down without a fight. She would fight for her life, for her freedom, for her son. She would fight for everything she had lost, everything she had thrown away. She would fight, and she would win. She walked to the window, looking out at the dark night. She could see the reflection of her face in the glass, a face that was no longer recognizable, a face that was haunted, broken, and determined. She took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next, ready to face the consequences of her choices, ready to face the truth, ready to face the widow's dilemma. For the first time since their murder plot began, Diana felt genuinely afraid. She found Shane's gym bag missing from the closet, along with some of his clothes. Had he abandoned her? Had the psychological pressure of the past weeks finally driven him to run? The thought sent ice through her veins. Without Shane, she was completely alone, facing potential murder charges with no one to corroborate her story about food poisoning. Diana tried calling Elite Fitness, but the manager said Shane hadn't shown up for his opening shift. His car was gone from the driveway. It was as if he'd simply vanished. By afternoon, panic was setting in. Diana drove to Shane's apartment, using the spare key he'd given her, and found it partially emptied. His passport was gone, along with the emergency cash he kept hidden in his dresser, but his laptop was still there. Diana's blood ran cold when she saw what was on the screen, a video file labeled Confession Shane Morrison. With trembling hands, Diana clicked play and watched her lover confess to multiple murders, including their plot against Reed and Connor. The video was clearly recorded under duress. Shane's face was bruised, his voice shaking with terror, but every word was damning. Worse, he implicated her completely, describing her role in planning the oleander poisoning, her financial motivations, even her casual dismissal of Connor's death. Diana watched in horror as Shane painted her as the mastermind, himself as merely a manipulated accomplice. The video ended with Shane's voice breaking. "I'm sorry to all the families I destroyed. Diana Matthews convinced me that this was the only way, but I should have known better. I should have walked away." Diana screamed and hurled the laptop across the room, watching it shatter against the wall. Shane had betrayed her, painted himself as the victim while making her look like a calculating monster. But why? And where was he now? Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Diana," Reed said, his voice calm and authoritative. "You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. "Sorry to disappoint you. Connor and I survived your little cooking experiment, oleander poisoning." "Really? Did you think I wouldn't recognize the symptoms from my military training? This is impossible." The hospital said exactly what I wanted them to say. "We've been watching you, Diana. Watching you and Shane plan your future with our life insurance money. Watching you laugh about hurting your own son." Diana sank to the floor, her mind reeling. If Reed and Connor were alive, then everything she'd suffered through, the psychological torment, the paranoia, the voices, had been orchestrated by her husband. "Where's Shane?" she demanded. "Shane won't be bothering anyone anymore," Reed replied with chilling finality. "He confessed to 4 murders before he disappeared. The families of his victims are finally getting justice." "You killed him," Diana whispered, her voice barely audible. "Justice," Reed corrected. "And now, it's your turn to face the consequences of your actions. You tried to destroy my family, Diana. You tried to take everything from me. Now you'll learn what it feels like to lose everything." She was gone, and he felt nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph, only a deep, abiding emptiness. Reed watched as the police car disappeared around the corner, taking Diana away from the life she had tried to steal. He had won, but it felt like a hollow victory. He had exposed her crimes, ensured she would face justice, but he couldn't shake the sense of loss that clung to him like a shroud. He had lost his wife, his partner, his confidant. He had lost the future they were supposed to have together. Reed turned away from the street, his mind already moving to the next steps. He needed to make sure Diana's arrest was just the beginning of her reckoning. He needed to ensure she would never hurt anyone again, never manipulate another soul into doing her bidding. He walked back into the house that was now a crime scene, a testament to Diana's betrayal. He could see the remnants of her life scattered throughout the rooms, the echoes of her laughter, the ghosts of her deceit. He picked up his phone, dialing Marcus. "It's done," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "Diana's in custody, but we need to make sure she stays there." Marcus's voice was grim. "I've already started digging into her legal options. She won't get bail, not with the evidence we have, but we need to make sure her lawyer can't find any loopholes." Reed nodded, even though Marcus couldn't see him. "Good. And make sure the confession video is leaked to the press. I want the world to know what she did, what she tried to do." "Already on it," Marcus replied. "I've got contacts at the major networks. They'll run the story as soon as we give them the green light." Reed took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "And Connor? How's he holding up?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "He's strong, Reed. He's angry, but he's handling it. He wants to see you." Reed felt a pang in his chest. He had been so focused on his revenge, on his quest for justice, that he had forgotten about his son. He had forgotten about the boy who had been through so much, who had lost so much. "I'll be there soon," Reed said, his voice softening. "I need to make sure he's okay. I need to make sure he knows he's not alone." "Take your time," Marcus replied. "He's safe here. He's waiting for you." Reed hung up the phone, his mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, 1,000 memories. He thought about Diana, about the life they had shared, the love they had lost. He thought about Connor, about the future they would build together, the family they would become. He took one last look around the house that was no longer his home. He saw the remnants of Diana's life, the echoes of her betrayal, and he knew that he could never come back here. He could never live in this place again, not with the ghosts of her deceit haunting every corner. He turned away, walking out of the house, out of the past and into the future. He had won his battle, but the war was far from over. He had to make sure Diana paid for her crimes, that she faced the full weight of her actions. He had to make sure Connor was safe, that he had a future free from the shadows of his mother's betrayal. And he had to make sure he never forgot, never forgave, never let himself be vulnerable to such pain again. He had to be strong, to be unyielding, to be the man his son needed him to be. He had to be Reed Matthews, the man who had survived the ultimate betrayal and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Connor stared at Diana, his face hard, his voice steady. "You were my mother. I trusted you. I believed you loved me, that you would always protect me. But you chose someone else over us. You tried to end our lives and erase us so you could start over. My father taught me that family is built on trust and loyalty, and you broke those. You broke me. You broke Dad. You broke the family. I hope you spend the rest of your life thinking about what you did, because I know I'll never forget, and I'll never forgive you." The words hit Diana harder than any sentence the judge could pronounce. Her son's coldness was an impenetrable wall, and she knew Connor meant every word. She turned her head away, unable to bear his gaze. Judge Brennan's voice filled the courtroom. "Diana Matthews, your actions have irreparably damaged your family and shaken the foundation of trust that binds our community. The court sentences you to 18 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole only after serving 15. This is justice for your husband, your son, and for all the lives impacted by your decisions." As the sentence was handed down, the courtroom remained silent, except for the sound of Diana's quiet, broken sobs. Reed and Connor left the courthouse together, side by side, united, moving toward a future free from Diana's shadow. Outside, the sun was bright. Reed put his hand on Connor's shoulder, pride and compassion mingling in his eyes. They had survived betrayal together, faced down the darkest side of human nature, and emerged stronger for it. For Diana, there was only silence, regret, and the long, slow march of time. For Reed and Connor, there was finally peace and hope for something new. Justice at last had been served cold. Reed's expression remained cold and unyielding. Connor turned away, refusing to meet her gaze. The finality of their rejection was a physical blow, and Diana felt the last shreds of hope crumble within her. She was led away in shackles, the weight of her actions crushing her. The courtroom buzzed with whispers and the rustling of papers as the media scrambled to capture every moment of her downfall. Diana's world had collapsed, and she was left alone with the ghosts of her choices. As she was escorted out, she caught a glimpse of Reed and Connor walking away, their backs straight, their heads held high. They were moving forward, leaving her behind in the ruins of her own making. The prison van ride was a blur. Diana sat in the back, her mind racing with regrets and what-ifs. She thought about the life she had thrown away, the family she had betrayed, and the son she had tried to kill. The weight of her actions was unbearable, and she felt the crushing pressure of her guilt and shame. When she arrived at the prison, she was processed and assigned to a cell. The stark, cold environment was a stark contrast to the life she had once known. She was given a uniform, a thin mattress, and a small locker for her belongings. The reality of her situation hit her hard, and she felt the tears welling up in her eyes. She spent her first night in prison curled up on her bunk, crying silently into her pillow. The sounds of other inmates, the clanging of doors, and the harsh fluorescent lights kept her awake, her mind racing with the magnitude of her mistakes. Over the next few days, Diana tried to adjust to prison life. She attended mandatory classes, ate in the cafeteria, and spent her free time in the yard, walking alone. The other inmates kept their distance, sensing her guilt and shame. She was an outcast, a pariah, and she deserved it. She wrote letters to Reed and Connor, begging for forgiveness, pleading for a chance to make amends. But the letters were returned unopened, a stark reminder of the chasm she had created between them. She was alone, truly alone, and she had no one to blame but herself. As the days turned into weeks, Diana began to accept her fate. She would spend the next 20 years in prison, paying for her crimes, living with the knowledge that she had destroyed her family and her life. She would have time to reflect, to regret, and to understand the depths of her betrayal. She found solace in the routine of prison life, the structure giving her a sense of purpose. She joined a book club, attended therapy sessions, and even started volunteering in the prison library. She was trying to make amends, to find a way to redeem herself, even if it was too late for her family. But deep down, she knew that forgiveness was a luxury she no longer deserved. She had chosen her path, and now she had to live with the consequences. She had to face the truth, that she had destroyed everything she ever had for a man who was using her, a man who had disappeared without a trace, leaving her to face the music alone. She had to face the reality that her husband and son were alive and well, moving on with their lives, and she was left to rot in prison, a prisoner of her own making. She had to face the widow's dilemma, the knowledge that she had lost everything, and there was no way to get it back. Connor had grown into a young man who was resilient, independent, and fiercely determined to make a difference in the world. He had chosen his path with purpose, driven by a desire to prevent others from experiencing the pain he had endured. Reed finished his breakfast, savoring the moment of quiet companionship with his son. "I'm proud of you, Connor. The way you've handled everything, the choices you've made, you're turning into an incredible young man." Connor smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his face. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you. You've been my rock, my guide, and my best friend." Reed felt a swell of pride and love. "We've been through a lot, but we've come out stronger. That's what matters." Connor nodded, his expression turning thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what comes next, after college, I mean. I want to do something meaningful, something that makes a real difference." Reed leaned back in his chair, considering his son's words. "You have a lot of options, Connor. Your future is wide open. Whatever you choose, I know you'll make a positive impact." Connor's eyes sparkled with determination. "I want to work with victims of abuse, help them heal and rebuild their lives. I want to be a part of the solution, not just the observer." Reed's heart swelled with pride. "That's a noble goal, Connor, and I have no doubt you'll achieve it. You have the strength, the intelligence, and the compassion to make a real difference." Connor grinned, his confidence growing. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." Reed checked his watch again, knowing he had to leave soon. "I need to go, but remember, no matter where I am or what I'm doing, you're always my top priority, you and your future." Connor nodded, his expression serious. I know, Dad, and I appreciate everything you've done for me. I wouldn't be who I am today without you." Reed stood up, giving his son a tight hug. "I love you, Connor. Always remember that." "I love you too, Dad," Connor replied, his voice filled with emotion. As Reed walked out the door, he felt a sense of peace and purpose. He had fought for justice, for his son, and for his own redemption. He had won, and now he was ready to move forward, to build a new life with his son by his side. The drive to the Department of Justice was uneventful, giving Reed time to reflect on the journey that had brought him to this point. He had faced the ultimate betrayal and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. He had learned the true meaning of family, of love, and of forgiveness. As he walked into the DOJ building, he was greeted by a sense of purpose and pride. He was Reed Matthews, a man who had survived the unthinkable and come out stronger. He was a father, a survivor, and a beacon of hope for those who had been hurt by the darkness in the world. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to make a difference, and ready to build a brighter future for himself and his son. He was ready to embrace the new beginnings that lay before him, to heal, to grow, and to thrive. He was ready to be the man he was always meant to be. He nodded, meeting Connor's gaze. "You know, there was a time I worried about what that might make us. But I've learned there's a big difference between protecting your family and crossing a line for selfish reasons. What we did ended a cycle of pain, not started one." Connor gave a small, relieved smile. "I think so too. I'm glad, Mrs. Peterson won't get calls from Diana anymore. She deserves peace. We all do." They sat for a moment in companionable silence, the weight of the past 2 years giving way to the comfort of their present. The tension that once haunted their home had faded, replaced by understanding and support. Reed realized just how far they had come, from fear and isolation to resilience and connection. "Ready for your morning run?" Reed asked, reaching for his sneakers. Connor grinned. "Always. Last one to the end of the road is on dish duty." They stepped out into the crisp morning air, the sun just starting to rise over a world that felt, finally, full of hope. Together, they ran side by side, a team born from adversity, but moving now towards new goals, new dreams, and a future they'd built themselves. For Reed and Connor, the cycle had ended. Justice, healing, and hope were theirs at last. "I came here because I needed to see for myself the man who finally stopped him." Linda's gaze was unwavering. "People don't like to talk about it in my family, but I knew what he was. He changed after our dad died, started getting in trouble, blaming other people for everything that went wrong. By the time I realized how much damage he was doing, it was too late. I tried to warn people, but no one wanted to believe me." Reed nodded, recognizing the pain in her eyes. Sometimes the hardest thing is seeing the truth about someone you love, and knowing you can't save them. Linda sat down, twisting her hands together. "I followed your case. I watched every court appearance, every interview you gave. I heard about what my brother and Diana did to you and your boy. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry for what he put your family through. I know that doesn't undo any of it, but I needed you to hear it. Not all of us are like him. Some of us wish things had gone differently." Reed felt the sincerity in her words and offered a gentle, understanding smile. "Thank you, Linda. That means more than you know. I'm sorry for your pain, too. It's not easy being left behind with those kinds of memories." She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I appreciate that. I've spent so long being angry at Shane, but seeing your story helped me let go of that anger. Maybe now the families he hurt, your family especially, can find some peace." "I hope so," Reed replied. "We're trying." Linda rose to leave, her shoulders a little lighter. I'm glad you and your son are okay. I hope you're able to move on, really move on. Reed watched her go, struck by how pain and healing could cross through even the darkest histories. When she was gone, Reed sat quietly in his office for a long time, reflecting. The past had a way of coming back, but this time, instead of more destruction, it brought closure. That day, the circle truly felt complete. He felt the weight of Linda's words hit him, heavier than he'd expected. I'm sorry for those women, Reed said quietly. I'm sorry no one saw the pattern until it was too late. Linda nodded, tears bright in her eyes. I know you didn't set out to destroy anyone, Mr. Matthews. I came to thank you because in the end, you saved people by ending Shane's cycle. But I also came to ask something of you. Please, keep doing what you're doing. My brother is gone now, but there are other men like him out there. You understand how they think, how they operate. If you help the law enforcement see these patterns sooner, maybe some other family won't wake up to the same nightmare. Reed looked at her, surprised by her plea. That's what I'm trying to do. I train investigators now, work with families. I want to keep other people from falling into the same traps. For what it's worth, I believe you did the world a favor, Linda said. She gathered her folder, photos and documents, proof of evil hidden in plain sight. But don't ever forget how far these ripples can spread. These women, their families, the pain never really ends, not for any of us. I won't forget, Reed promised, voice soft but resolute. Thank you for trusting me with this. Linda gave a sad smile, then left as quietly as she'd entered. Alone, Reed studied the faces on the desk. He thought of Connor, of his own journey, how darkness seemed to linger long after its source had been extinguished. He understood, more than ever, that true justice came not only from ending evil, but from helping others find their way through the aftermath. As the sun set outside his office window, Reed resolved to keep fighting, not just for his family, but for every name and every face who needed someone willing to stand up against the monsters in the world. The struggle never truly ended, but neither did hope. Justice was complete, but Reed understood now that true resolution was never simple. The damage Shane had wrought lingered in the lives he'd shattered, in the families destroyed, and the guilt and grief left behind. Even Diana's story, tragic as it was, had become just one thread in a larger tapestry of hurt and survival. Reed took comfort in Connor's path. His son had chosen to use their painful experience to help others, not to dwell on anger or trauma. Watching Connor grow into a man committed to justice assured Reed that hope, rather than bitterness, had won out in their story. Reed's own work, training law enforcement and consulting, meant he could keep fighting for families like his, shining a light on dangers others might miss. The world, he knew, would always have darkness, but it also had people willing to stand against it. He closed his office blinds as evening stole across the city. There was no going back, but there was always the chance to move forward, to heal, to love again. If not in the same ways, then in ways wiser and stronger. He and Connor had survived betrayal, rebuilt their lives, and would keep helping others do the same. With that in mind, Reed picked up another case file, ready to put his hard-won wisdom to use once more. The past could not be changed, but the future was still theirs to shape. And in that, there was hope. His victims were finally able to rest, knowing their killer would never hurt another family. Reed Matthews had survived the ultimate betrayal and emerged stronger, teaching his son that some people couldn't be saved or forgiven, but that justice was always worth pursuing. The war was over, and they had won completely. Years later, when true crime documentaries examined the case, they focused on Diana's transformation from suburban housewife to attempted murderer, on Shane's pattern of manipulation and murder, and on the ripple effects that destroyed multiple families. But they would never quite understand the most important part of the story. That sometimes when the system fails, when predators think they've found easy prey, when evil people make the mistake of targeting the wrong family, justice finds a way. Reed Matthews had been a soldier, a protector, a father. When his family was threatened, he'd done what soldiers do. He'd eliminated the threat and protected the innocent. Oh, some stories don't have complicated moral lessons or ambiguous endings. Sometimes, evil is stopped by good people who refuse to be victims. Sometimes, justice is that simple. And so, the story ends with hope, of healing, of justice, and of new beginnings.